Dear friends, today we deal with the threefold sufferings of Saint Therese. Our human sufferings are three kinds: physical, moral, and spiritual. In the case of Therese, these three occurred almost simultaneously, especially the physical and spiritual sufferings. It became all the more intense towards the end of her life, particularly after the Maundy Thursday experience until death. It's almost 1 year and a half. The first hematesis, vomiting of blood, took place on the night between Maundy Thursday and Good Friday of 1896, that is 1 year and a half before her death. It happened in this way. After the night adoration, she went to bed and something came up in her mouth. She contained it in her kerchief. She was curious to see what it was. But at that time, there was no electricity in their community. We had to light the lamp. And after the night prayer, until morning prayer, during the strict silence time, unless there is an emergency, one shall not light the lamp. So, though she was curious to know what it was, she abided by the law, by the rule. And early morning, when the day broke, that was Good Friday, naturally she took the kerchief and checked. It was blood. And she takes in a good spirit, saying, "My Lord, my Jesus gave me the invitation to join him on the day he died." Though she took in a very spiritual way, later she will have so much of painful experiences. We will see later. So, Therese confided this to the prioress Gonzague, who did not attach much importance. And she did not reveal to Pauline, with whom she was so intimate, but not to give her a shock to Pauline. For 14 months, she did not reveal it. But she had to say to Maria, because she was the assistant infirmarian. So Therese let Maria know about it. And the doctor was called in, the family doctor, Dr. Cornier. So 2 persons treat her in the last days. Family doctor, Dr. Cornier, and Dr. Lernail, the husband of her cousin, Jeanne. Doctor concluded maybe a vein in the throat might have broken or some pulmonary congestion. The doctor gave her some ointment and inhalation of medicinal vapor, etc. So nobody took that seriously. On her part, Therese went on with normal life, observing the rules, usual work in the community, and so on. Though occasionally she used to spit blood, she had frequent cough, she had fever, physical exhaustion, etc. For instance, her room was on the first floor. From the ground floor to her first floor, to climb the staircase, it is said she took 20 to 25 minutes. It was so exhausting. And to mark that painful experience, in the half of the staircase, as we go on, turn this way, there is a board which is written in French, "Aujourd'hui, un peu de travail, demain, repos éternel." Today, a little bit of pain, but tomorrow, eternal rest. How she sanctified that pain. And due to this painful experience, she was exempted from the obligation to attend the choir, that means prayer in community. She was exempted from the common meals in the refectory, from the community recreation, and so on. And she was moved to the infirmary on the 8th of July in 1897. That means 2.5 months before her death, she was moved to the infirmary of the community. It was there we have that last conversations, because the sisters who kept company for her at night used to ask Therese some questions, and she gave her answer, which the sisters, especially Pauline, wrote down, and that's what we call the last conversations. And by then, by July 1897, her right lung was already gone. She was feeling suffocated, and she had a difficulty to hold a pencil. And however, during there was ups and downs. Sometimes she feels relieved, sometimes becomes serious. On the 15th of August, she had a severe attack. And Dr. Cornier was on leave, holidays. So her cousin's husband, Dr. Maliekkal, was called in, who confirmed that her tuberculosis was on the last stage. And by September, gangrenes of her intestines developed. Pain becomes very acute, and she feels to cry. She had frequent sobbing. To soothe her pain, a spoonful of morphine was given to her from time to time, but no injection, because Mother Gonzaga was against such expensive treatment. Her agony lasted for 37 hours, and she died on 30th of September in the evening at 7:30. The second aspect of her suffering is moral suffering or mental suffering, sufferings in the mind. It is said the things which usually go unnoticed becomes harsh and painful when one is sick. That happened also to Therese, because the noise in the community, the movement of the sisters, and her feeling of uselessness. And she feels that she has become a burden to the community, especially for expensive treatment. And she was deprived of Holy Communion and absence from the community prayer, from exemption from reciting the divine office. All those things added a mental, moral agony. Besides this, it is said, she had the temptation to gluttony, overeating. She showed the desire to eat chicken, cutlet, chocolate, tuna fish, deliciously prepared rice, etc. Naturally, these things could not be given in a cloistered Carmel because of the law of abstinence. Anyway, in spite of that, like a child, she showed her desire to eat these delicacies. And that also was a moral suffering. And to this we may add also certain previous experiences, that moral suffering. For instance, the 3 years when Papa was admitted in a mental asylum and she was in CARMEL, she was unable to even see Papa. You can imagine how much she might have felt sad, what would have been her moral, mental suffering. Besides, the rule of silence prohibited her to talk to her sisters, especially to Pauline. She wanted to talk, but she had to control because of the rule. So all these are part of her moral suffering. The third aspect of her suffering is spiritual sufferings, or in her crisis of faith. The main content is not that she doubted about the existence of God, but she doubted about immortality and heaven. And she felt that there is no life, sometimes in a temptation, no life after death. There is no heaven. I wasted my life. And she says, one will have to undergo this trial. And at one moment she says, Mother, if I explain what I felt, I'm afraid I should blaspheme. I might be tempted to curse God because it's for Him I wasted my youthful life, dying at the age of 24 and 9 months. And very often, someone was whispering in her ears, you are dreaming about the light, about a fatherland embalmed in the sweet perfumes. You are dreaming about the eternal possession of the Creator of these marvels. You believe that one day you will walk out of this fog which surrounds you. Well, advance, go ahead. Rejoice in death, which will give you not what you hope for, but a night of nothingness. That means you imagine that is a heaven with all the perfumed atmosphere and all the marvels. You go, you will get it. I mean, ridiculing voice. That's what I say. I don't want to explain everything. To Pauline she confided, last evening one voice said to me, are you sure that you are loved by God? Did He come to tell you? It is not the opinion of the creatures which will justify you. And all these things, that means you think God is speaking to you, God will save you and so on, but nothing. Go, you will experience nothing, only nothingness, no heaven, no eternity. So, in spite of all this, she overcomes her trial. She remembers the agony of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, her temptation against faith did not make her love Jesus less. For Therese, suffering was another way of renewing the intimacy with Christ. In that way, Therese, suffering for Therese, all these three things will be a means of uniting herself with the sufferings of Christ and use it for the redemption of the world. Because Christ accepted suffering to redeem the world. And Therese shows solidarity with Him and offer her sufferings with the sufferings of Christ. Thus she makes it a source of salvation for her and for the world, in particular for the conversion of sinners. That she proved by offering the sufferings for the conversion of Pranzini and that Father Hyacinth Lisieux. So sufferings, though she felt it, but her intimacy with Jesus, her love for Jesus, her faith in Jesus made her sublimate these sufferings and make use of it as a means of salvation for her and for others.